What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious, along with Jess Total Baggage and the Nature Boy Joe, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Today's topic, the legacy of Curt Henning. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, and check out exclusive content on Daily Motion at Our Wrestling Podcast, and on social media, and give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2018, or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast if you're not dead. Joe, you're a Curt Henning fan, right? You love the Curt Hennings and the Mr. Perfects of the world.
He was absolutely perfect. I wish I had prepared for the episode a little bit more. I wanted to have like a spit my gum out and
do the thing.
Oh, that would have been lovely. Yeah, that would have been good. Which, by the way, is not as easy as he made it look. I'm just saying, to spit your gum out in the right way to smack it across the crowd. Curt Henning was born on March 28th, 1958, the son of professional wrestling wrestler Larry the Axe Henning. And he was childhood friends with fellow wrestler Rick Rude. They attended Robbinsdale High School in his hometown of Robbinsdale, Minnesota, alongside Tom Zink, Freddie Boone, Nikita Koloff, John Nord, Road Warrior Hawk, and Barry Dorso, all who became professional wrestlers. Why did everybody come out of Robbinsdale High?
Dude, Minnesota's weird. Like, it's just fucking... And they all worked at the same bar, apparently. They all, like, it's crazy. Yeah. Like, it's really crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, what was going on? What was going on?
They all knew each other, too. It's like, yeah, when they're in professional wrestling, like, they're all like, oh, yeah, I know them.
I mean, so many people, like, so many professional wrestlers came from Minnesota. It was crazy.
Yeah. Where Brock came out of, too.
I mean, that's where Flair's from, I think, right?
What's in the water? Yeah. I don't know.
Yes.
Curt Henning was known as Cool Curt Henning. He began his career on January 30th, 1980.
He should not have.
Cool Curt in the American Wrestling Association, or the AWA, the promotion that had made his father, Larry the Axe Henning, a star. Henning would drift between the WWF and Pacific Northwest Wrestling between 81 and 1983. He would then return to the AWA in late 1983. Jess, was he doing, prelim work in 81?
Yeah, he was just starting. He was just starting out.
Yeah,
he's just a wee baby.
Getting $100 to get leveled by somebody. He was a main star there.
He's Cool Curt Henning.
He was cool. Curt Henning. He would eventually become one of the promotion's top stars in his own right, winning the AWA World Tag Team Championship with Scott Hall. There it is. Beating gorgeous Jimmy Garvin and Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal. What? On January 18, 1986. The history here is phenomenal. Garvin and Regal were tag champs in 86.
I don't think it's a Steven Regal.
It's not the same. No, I was just going to say it's not the same Regal that we thought. Yeah, no. It's not the same.
Was he like 10 at this time? He was like a baby, probably. When you hear the names, it's interesting. He resumed solo career in the AWA, culminating in defeating the legendary Nick Bockwinkel. Wow. For the AWA. Don't tell me there's more than one Bockwinkel, by the way.
It's not the same Bockwinkel. Like everybody. It's not the same Curt Henning.
Like, hey,
it's not that different one. That Curt Henning did not beat Bockwinkel.
It's a different Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the one that you know.
Defeated him at Super Clash on May 2nd,
It's not that Super Clash you're thinking of. It's a different one.
I know all he did was he said something to Curt Henning. Goes up and hammers away. Count of 1, 2.
Larry Zbyszko had to give Curt Henning something to punch the spot with the not buying this at all. Look at this. Look at Zbyszko doing.
Yeah, with the help of Larry Zbyszko, there's more than one Zbyszko.
Well, it is that Zbyszko that you're thinking of, yes.
Yeah, and turning villain in doing so. Henning, along with his father, Larry the Axe Henning, would engage in a long feud with Greg Gagne, and his father, Gagne, and Vern Gagne. Wow. That's, I don't remember Greg so much as I remember Vern. That's probably
nobody remembers Greg.
Yeah.
Greg doesn't even remember Greg.
Yeah, Greg's like, did I wrestle?
He, not Greg, but Mr. Henning was being associated with Medusa Maselli, the AWA World Women's Champion since December 17th, of 87.
Not that much.
Henning and Medusa joined
so
the
good.
Diamond Exchange, a stable led by Diamond Dallas Page that also included Bad Company and Colonel De Beers. Henning returned to WWF in mid-88. He made his television in-ring return on September 11th of same year. He was repackaged with a new character of an arrogant, braggart villain
Called
who
Totally
claimed to be able to
Cool
accomplish
Curt
difficult
Henning.
tasks. No, it wasn't totally cool. He was perfectly taking on these tasks, thus earning the name of Mr. Perfect.
God, I mean, what a run he had before. Like, I mean, listen, I know AWA wasn't the same AWA in like 86, 87, but that's when he won the world title. Like, so it wasn't totally dead yet. Like in 87, like it still had some kind of life or whatever. But I mean, they were obviously WWF was the biggest show in town, and Crockett was starting to fade. And you know,
I was gonna say,
I mean,
like,
86, 87, it was still one of the big three.
Yeah, it was still
like, it wasn't really until like 89, 90 that it was like
exactly.
Dead,
like,
dead.
But what happens though, Joe? And just to your point, when your top guy becomes champion in AWA, and then the WWF just snatches him up for vignettes.
And I often forget too that Medusa was like his valet for a while. Like, God, man, like she was AWA as well.
It's crazy. So yeah, he let's see. His vignettes, we talked about him in the very beginning. Stars of various major league sports, including Wade Boggs, Steve Jordan, Felton Spencer, and Mike Modano, co-starred with Henning in a lot of these vignettes.
People's dream to be perfect. But with me, see, it's no dream. It's reality. It's life. And take the simple game of bowling. It's everybody's dream to bowl the perfect game. Well, being Mr. Perfect, you sit back on the couch, you put your feet up, and you relax because you are going to witness the perfect game.
He went undefeated on television for over a year, beating mid-carders throughout 89, and then Perfect began appearing with the Genius and an arrogant poetry reciting scholar on the Brother Love show, which, by the way, Brother Love was the one that was doing all these vignettes. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Pritchard was a big part of all of those vignettes. And they began a rivalry with Hulk Hogan over the WWF Championship. Their rivalry heated up when the Genius defeated Hogan by countout with Henning's assistance on the November 25th Saturday night's main event. And the duo stole Hogan's title belt and destroyed it backstage. I forgot about that.
They beat it with a hammer, which is fucking hilarious. Like, because it's shattering like plastic, because that's what it was. But we're supposed to believe it was like gold, like, and he's just shattering gold with a hammer.
So crazy. Perfect's undefeated streak ended when he suffered his first pinfall loss on a regional television against the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, on March 19th at Madison Square Garden. I mean, you would argue you want him to do it against Hogan on Saturday's main event, which does happen, but that's still trying to build the Warrior at the same time. That's a pretty good spot to.
Well, it was non-televised. I mean, it was regional on television. It was we talked about past episodes where some of the big markets like LA, New York and stuff. So when they would have a house show at LA Sports Arena or Madison Square Garden, I think MSG was just called the MSG Network. And if you lived in New York or the surrounding areas like Long Island,
you could see it.
You could watch it live. So if a house show was happening and you didn't get tickets, you could watch it on your local.
Losing to the Warrior makes sense. Losing to Brutus Beefcake at WrestleMania 6 is not. I mean,
I will defend that till
Brutus the fucking barber.
Listen, Brutus was over, and I don't care what anybody says. Like, he was over as shit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you go back and hear that crowd, I get what you're saying.
And I hate undefeated streaks. So like, it did Henning a favor, like, because if you just
That's
said,
true.
you know, I just feel like it was just better that he got it out of the way. Then like, and then he would win. Dave, you'll go on to what he accomplished afterwards. But I was like, I didn't want him to be undefeated, winning the Intercontinental Championship, because then when you lose your undefeated streak, then you lose your title as well, and that's super deflating for a character. So I'm just glad they fucking got it out of the way before, because it didn't matter. Like, we all knew he wasn't perfect. Spoiler. Like, that he was a heel and he was very gifted and athletic, but he wasn't perfect. He was beatable. But yet, like, we just, as fans, that's where we hated him. I mean, we loved him, but, like, you know, people hated him because they're like, fuck you, I know you can get beat. You're just not facing anybody. Like, you know, and that's what the whole thing was for. It's like, yeah, I'm perfect when I'm facing the Red Rooster or Brady Boone or, you know, somebody else like that. But, you know, when I face the Warrior and Hulk, like I'm a chicken shit heel.
I mean, there were worse people for him to have lost to, but Brutus definitely, as hot as Brutus was, he was still Brutus.
Well,
like
and Brutus, and they were actually going to program. The thing is, to make it even better for you right now, the program was for Brutus to. Dave's going to read on. Brutus beats him at Mania, and then Perfect wins the belt, the IC belt, and Brutus was going to beat him.
Henning would defeat Tito Santana in a tournament finals to win the IC title. He would also reveal Bobby the Brain Heenan as his new Perfect manager, and then Henning was scheduled to defend the title against Brutus the Barber Beefcake at SummerSlam, stemming from his loss to Beefcake at WrestleMania, but Beefcake suffered an injury, and the Texas Tornado substituted for him. Perfect dropped the IC title.
Why are you mad at Beefcake? Like, they didn't even have Mr. Perfect win. Like, it was like, oh, Beefcake's gone. They're like, fucking Tornado can step in and beat him. And so he was going to lose no matter what. Like, it wasn't. It was just, Vince is like, nope, you're losing. But and you know, for that moment, if SummerSlam, you know, the crowd popped like crazy for Kerry Von Erich. Like, he looked like $1 million. But that was supposed to be Beefcake's
even
moment.
With no
he
foot.
Robbed my favorite 100%. Brutus Beefcake of his moment. Parasailing did. Some chick who was parasailing. just the audacity.
Yeah, because you know, it's funny. It's like when you hear a parasailing accident, you assume that Brutus is the parasailer. He's not.
Nope.
He's just in the water.
He came up out of the water for air, and then he got knees in the eye sockets. Like, Jesus.
Boom.
Like, what a legitly, what a horrific fucking injury. Like, it was crazy. Like, he almost died and like crazy. It was all.
Can I ask though, what happened to her? Did she break any bones?
She's probably absolutely fine.
Perfect would regain the title by defeating Texas Tornado on the December 15th episode of Superstars with help of Ted DiBiase. On the June 15th episode of Superstars, Bobby Heenan retired as a manager and introduced the coach, John Tolos, as Henning's new manager. Was that because Bobby was leaving?
No, he didn't want to do full-time work anymore on the road. Like, his neck was bad, and he didn't want to do it. So he was going
to do more stuff with Gorilla, right?
Yeah, he was going to do more commentating, which he already did a lot anyway. But he started doing pay-per-views around that time with Vince.
But a lot of that stuff can be done in Stanford. So all the stuff that they recorded that they would put on Saturday.
Yeah, he didn't want to. He didn't want to be on the road anymore. He just got tired. He had no neck problems. He had neck surgery.
You can do that. You can do that in Connecticut. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
he could just.
Which sucked for Henning because he got John. Which John Tolos was fine for what he was. And you know, in the regions that he was popular, like I know who John Tolos was, but the coach, what a generic fucking like character.
Nothing.
Like Heenan's like, yeah, I want to get off the road, and they're like, we're gonna put no thought into it, and John Tolos, you're gonna be called the coach, and you're gonna blow a fucking whistle like Fonzie in ECW. You're just gonna annoy the shit out of everybody.
Brutal.
Like, yeah, it was just so bad. But I mean, Henning's so talented, like, I think Vince probably just figured, like, it doesn't matter who I fucking put you with. Like, you're Curt Henning, so it doesn't really matter.
He didn't really need a manager anyway.
Yeah, why give him anybody?
They give a manager to, like, I mean, he's good on the mic. He can speak.
Why give him anybody at that point? Like, I wouldn't have given him anybody. Just let him go on his own. You know, like, we didn't talk about that mid-card streak that you mentioned a little bit ago where he was undefeated. They kind of separated the Hart Foundation at that time. Not on storyline, but on house shows. Anvil would just take on a singles wrestler, and Brett would take on Henning. And they killed it. Like, there's just so many matches on Coliseum Home Video of Perfect and Henning before they had their SummerSlam match, before they had their King of the Ring match.
I'm sure Brett
they just stole the show, and they would go out there for like 30 minutes, and like it was amazing. Right. Like, I mean, they're both just, they understood. I dare say, God, like, it might be my favorite Bret Hart opponent, Curt Henning, maybe. I mean, he's had a couple other really good ones, like Austin, you know, probably gets the nod. Right. But I mean, Henning was Brett and Henning every time they face each other was awesome.
Yep.
Even if it was a
Henning,
house show match, like it didn't matter. Like,
yeah, no, 100%. Henning did begin a rivalry with the British Bulldog actually, but he suffered a back injury in late June of that year, which led to a rivalry being wrapped up. Bret Hart, to your point, just was announced as the next challenger for the IC title. And in the meantime, Henning was held out of house shows. On television, he wrestled a few prelim opponents, but to avoid stressing his back with the Perfect Plex, he adopted the gimmick of throwing his opposition out of the ring in disgust and defeating them by count. I remember a lot.
I remember specifically that. Like, we didn't know, like, but on that stretch, Henning just started when he had the coach in his corner, he would just start beating the shit out of people in the ring and then throw them out, and they would get counted out, and he would win that way. Like, and I thought it was weird. They were trying to show like this hard edge. That's what they push it as, but it's really because his back was so bad he couldn't do the Perfect Plex. So, which is crazy.
Perfect lost the title to Bret Hart at SummerSlam with a broken tailbone and bulged disc that forced him to retire from the ring at that moment.
Nice block there, that move. Oh, he's got that hole half applied on the canvas. He's turning him over. Beautiful counter. The sharpshooter. He's got it. He's got it. No. We've got a new champion. We got a new champion. No. All right. The winner of this match.
It's big.
Got a
He
fat
was dealing
payout
with it the
from
whole
Lloyd's
time.
of London.
Yeah,
He sure did.
Yeah.
The Lloyd's of London. It was in my mind the whole time, Joe. I love how you brought that up. Henning spent the following year recovering from his injury. He returned to television on November 23rd episode of Superstars, where he became Ric Flair's executive consultant. I don't know about you guys. I was so happy to see Mr. Perfect.
I love that pairing
at
too.
that moment.
Like, he was the perfect fucking manager for the most part. Like, he was funny, like in Rick's corner. Like, I always, as a kid, I had a conflict because he was young in my mind, and he was young anyway. Like, I'm sure his age here was like, what, 30 something? Like, I mean,
he's definitely younger than Rick.
He was younger than Rick,
point.
and like, it's just crazy. Like, whenever I saw what looked like to be a capable athlete, like managing somebody else, I'm like, I don't like them as a manager because. So I think that might have been my thought as a kid, was just like, I don't buy Mr. Perfect because he's fucking should be wrestling right now. But we just didn't know as kids that he was hurt really bad.
During that period, Perfect assisted Flair on winning matches and managed him to 2 World Heavyweight Championship reigns in 1992. By the fall of 92, Perfect and Flair were in the midst of a rivalry with Randy Savage, building to a tag team match in Survivor Series where Flair and Razor Ramon would face Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. However, Warrior was released from the WWF weeks prior to the event due to demanding money, if I remember right. On the November 16th episode of
Not that time. I think he tested positive for steroids. Either way, the Warrior got himself into trouble, huh?
How about that? And November 16th episode of Primetime Wrestling, Savage asked Perfect to be his partner. After initially laughing off Savage's offer, Perfect was swayed by Savage's cajoling and Bobby Heenan's degrading comments and commanding Perfect to follow orders, which would lead to Perfect turning into a fan favorite for the first time in WWF by dumping water on Heenan and accepting Savage's offer to return to the ring.
Savage, you want an answer? I'll give you an answer. I accept as your partner. I said I accept.
Hey, I'm talking. Don't you hear me? Whoa! Don't you hear me? I'm sorry. Let me tell you something right now. You don't put your hands on me. No, wait a minute. Survivor Series, I'm going to be in the corner of the Macho Man Randy Savage. I accept it, Savage. And Bobby Heenan, I'm going to tell you, you put your hands on the wrong person. You just got done putting your hands on Mr. Perfect. You don't touch Mr. Perfect. I know. You've been holding me back all these years. You've been putting me on the back burner. Ric Flair has been walking in my shadow. Ric Flair wants to fill my shoes.
Become his partner at Survivor Series. Savage and Perfect would win by disqualification against Flair and Ramon at that Survivor Series show in 1992. Perfect would feud with Ric Flair until defeating him in an excellent match on the third ever episode of Monday Night Raw in a loser leaves WWF match that's really interesting because I think if I remember right from the stories, Vince was very adamant he had to get younger and Flair had to go, so we're gonna let you bounce. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during WrestleMania
There was
9,
more hype and build up for that match than there was Bret Hart winning the title, to our
Yeah.
point earlier.
Yeah. During WrestleMania, Henry would start a feud with the Intercontinental Champion Shawn Michaels. Perfect competed against Shawn for that IC Championship at SummerSlam, where Perfect lost by countout due to interference from Michaels by new bodyguard Diesel. He was set to participate as a member of Razor Ramon's team at Survivor Series, but was replaced in the match by Savage. And Ramon took the microphone before the match, saying Perfect was such a perfect partner that he tagged out before the match had even begun. Perfect made his surprise return to WWF at WrestleMania 10 on March 20th of 94, where he was a special guest referee for the WWF Championship match between Lex Luger and Yokozuna. Perfect disqualified Luger after Luger had manhandled Perfect, who was tending to Yokozuna's stricken managers Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji, instead of counting the pinfall and turned heel again. Perfect was set to start another rivalry with Luger, during which he explained that he screwed Luger because of Luger's illegal win over Perfect the previous year at WrestleMania 9, which that match was garbage in my opinion. However, plans were scrapped after Henning's back problems flared up again. He left the WWF in the spring of 1994. Henning took a year off to recover from a back injury until he returned to the company as a color commentator in Survivor Series pay-per-view at 1995.
So this is when the he took out the Lloyd's of London policy here, and it was all a blur because there were so many stop and starts with Henning from like 94 to like 96 when he left. And then when he went to WCW, the contract was so big that he could afford to default on the Lloyd's of London policy. That Lloyd's of London thing, that should be a separate episode altogether because like the Lloyd's of London and the way the wrestlers, but you know, wrestlers are carnies, right? Like once they figure a loophole out, they're going to attack you. So it's like the Lloyd's of London thing was started to help wrestlers, like basically, and athletes that couldn't get regular medical insurance, but leave it to wrestlers to fucking scam them and try to fucking like skim off the top and try to, it's crazy, man. Like, and Henning was
to the
part
point
of
where
that group.
They stopped insuring them.
Yeah, they stopped insuring him at that point because all these wrestlers they could go to any doctor at any fucking time, and any doctor would be like, holy shit, you were in a car wreck. So, yeah, you should be able to collect that. But then to get in wrestling shape was different. There was not the medical standards that there is now, the physicals or anything like that. You didn't have to do any of that shit back then. So it's like they would just they would start to wrestle, and then Lloyd's of London would be like, what are you doing? And they're like, wrestling's fake anyway, so... And they're like, yeah, but you're fucking, like... You got hurt from wrestling, so we can't insure you. And so many wrestlers were trying to draw from Lloyd's of London and get wrestling contracts again. And it's like, it's crazy. Like that all these, they were like, no. And like Joe said, after a while, they're like, yeah, so we're not going to be a thing anymore and insure you guys because you guys just completely like took advantage of it.
You know, so like singers would insure their voices or actors might insure their face, you know, or something like that, you know, so they would insure things that were that no other company would insure. And so, so wrestlers were like, oh, well, I'm going to insure my body.
In mid-96, Henning was placed in an angle with Hunter Hearst Helmsley, where he would come out to the ringside during his matches and steal his female escorts, which would often cause a distraction for Helmsley and affect his performance in the match. During the rivalry, Perfect helped Mark Mero in winning the Intercontinental Championship from Farouk at the same time. The following night on Raw, Perfect was initially going to make his wrestling comeback on Helmsley, but was attacked by Helmsley backstage just moments before the match. It appeared Helmsley's attack left Perfect injured and unable to compete because he probably was still under the Lloyd's of London contract. This all turned out to be a ruse for Perfect, sickening Remo into defending his title against Helmsley with help from Perfect. Helmsley won the title from Miro. Perfect began to serve as a mentor to Helmsley and accompanied him to the ring. Perfect left the WWF once again shortly before Survivor Series in that year, making his last televised appearance on on a November episode of Raw on the 5th of that month. Henning signed with World Championship Wrestling in 1997. His first match in the company took place at July's Bash of the Beach pay-per-view, where he became Diamond Dallas Page mystery tag team partner against NWO members Savage and Scott Hall. Henning ended up turning on Page, costing the match. I thought that match was so weird, by the way. He barely makes it back, and then he turns on Page in that same match.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's WCW. I don't know if it's the injury. I don't know if it's a combination of all.
It was
WCW.
It was just WCW.
Yeah, he went to WCW too. He went to WCW to wrestle. He broke. Yeah, he separated his Lloyd's. Like, in order to sign with WCW, he had to let go of his policy with Lloyd's of London. So he was on an actual wrestling contract with WCW.
And it's just, and that's how you're going to treat him on his debut. It's just making
everything's
sense.
fine. The company never messed up, and they never went out of business. What, Dave? Go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Shortly after his debut, he became a top favorite of the Four Horsemen and the New World Order. As both factions showed interest in recruiting him, he ultimately joined the Horsemen, taking the spot of retiring Arn Anderson. He slapped me on the shoulder and I dropped my water bottle. I don't know, I'm just saying. Henning replied to Anderson's invitation by saying it would be a privilege. Anderson's plea that Henning takes his spot, was the subject of the following week's parody of the Horsemen by the NWO, which led to the War Games match. At Fall Brawl, Henning was allegedly jumped backstage by the NWO before the War Games match and came to ringside mid-match with his arm in a sling. Yeah, I feel like we're just totally passing over the NWO, making fun of that moment. People got really mad about that.
But that's the best kind of heat, though. And then they just didn't know how to pay it off because they never know how to pay anything off. Because NWO didn't want to ever lose, and Hogan, Hall, and Nash never wanted to lose. So, like, if you're going to build that heat and do that parody, the Horseman goes over. But they didn't.
Yeah.
So they used Henning to change and betray them, and then Henning slammed Flair's head in the door, which to this day, I don't know how they did it. I know they put a metal stopper on top of. I know how they did it, but like when you look at it, it's like, dude, that spot where he threw the cage door into Flair's head was awesome. Like I was like, God damn! Like I don't know how you faked that, but I mean, obviously they welded a metal piece to where like when it hit, it still made the noise, but it was wide enough to where it didn't hit Flair's head, and it was like I don't know how the fuck anybody has. I wouldn't trust that. Like his metal can flex and bend when you throw it and to shut the door. And like it was awesome the way they did it. Like I remember that spot, but the feud sucked because it was like both Flair and Henning. I think Henning was rusty and Flair was going through legit injuries here.
Right.
So it's like they couldn't. Why start a hot feud like that if you knew the two combatants couldn't like be 100% for you, like going through? So it away, like when
the house down.
Yeah, right away in WCW, it's like they were just fucking around with Henning, and Henning didn't look good when he first came back. Like he didn't wrestle full time in like 3 years. So like he didn't understand. Like like they didn't understand. Like well, he can't fucking. But Bischoff was like whatever. Like we stole another name from WWF and. Who cares? Like, the NWO storyline's super hot, so we'll just put him in the NWO and he'll be fine. Like that's what they thought.
That's really how it kind of
and they were right because they never went out of business. And WCW were watching WCW pay-per-view this weekend, I think.
Yeah.
My God.
NWO
Bischoff was totally right.
Never lost. Never got bored. Never got.
This is really a story of celebration about how WCW
never tired. So, Henning betrayed the Horsemen, handcuffing them to the cage, slamming the steel cage into Flair's head, as you talked about. And he said he destroyed the Horsemen. As a further slap to Flair, he claimed to be the wrestler that made Minnesota famous, thus becoming a villain. The following night, Nitro, Henning would win the United States Championship by defeating the Horseman, Steve Mongo McMichaels, which, in my opinion, is not that big of an issue.
Good.
Yeah.
Mongo was the champion. Good stuff.
He's still alive. I think.
He's still kicking.
Still kicking. He won't kick. He keeps kicking out. Henning held that title for 3 months, during which he successfully defended the title against Flair in a standard wrestling match at Halloween Havoc, and a no DQ match at World War III before dropping the title to Diamond Dallas Page at Starrcade.
Sends DDP in. DDP catches the man. He got him. Diamond Cutter, get him covered. Covering. Get him covered. 1, 2, new champion. Yes. Yes. All right. Let's get the official word from David Penza.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the match, and new WCW United States Heavyweight Champion, Diamond Dallas Page.
Destiny just knocked on the door. Diamond Dallas Page.
For the majority of 98, Henning would be in a mid-card scene. He also fought injuries in that time. His most notable period in the year was having Rick Rude in his corner and challenging Goldberg for the WCW title. He would lose all of those encounters, not surprised. At the beginning of 93, Henning would team with Barry Windham and feud with the Horsemen. They would win the WCW Tag Team titles from Benoit and Malenko at Super Brawl 9. Kind of interesting little head note there. But yeah. So in May, Henning formed a new faction called the West Texas Rednecks.
Dude,
with Wyndham,
listen.
Barry's
Rap
brother,
is crap.
Wyndham, and Barry
Man.
Duncombe Jr. The group members were presented as Southern County musicians.
So to me as a wrestling fan, it's one thing to be over, during the 80s and 90s boom. And he did a great job. Miss Perfect. Very well-known character. Ian as manager. Everything great. Intercontinental champion. Wonderful. The West Texas Rednecks, were so fucking funny. And so they had a whole Nitro where they had Megadeth there. And they had Megadeth, right. There was a band stage set up. And the whole thing was, nobody knew it at the time, but Goldberg was going to do a surprise return because he was injured. And Megadeth was going to perform his new entrance song, which lasted 3 months or whatever. But anyway, so they had a whole band set up there. So Henning before went to Bischoff and said, hey, so we want to do this gimmick because they just hired the No Limit Soldiers and Master P. And so Curt Henning's like, I want to do a gimmick where I hate rap and we're going to be country. And he's like, you already have the band set up anyway, so can we go out and and they wrote the song, I think Jimmy Hart helped him, called Rap is Crap. And they went out live on the set that Megadeth was going to perform, later in the night for Goldberg, and they sang Rap is Crap live. And I belly laughed so fucking hard when I watched it live because it was so genius and so out of nowhere. And they were all playing instruments, and it was ridiculous. And then they made a music video afterwards, and they did this music video. They were riding quads, and Wyndham ate shit on a dirt pile, and it was just so fucking funny. All of it was so good. I'm like, God, but WCW, of course, didn't know what to do with it at this point because in '99 they were dying.
Well, then let me lay this one on you. How many people just plain outright hate rap music? Later on tonight, over on the B stage on the other side of the room here, you're going to hear Mega Crap or whatever the name of they are. Right now, we're going to give you what you all came to hear. That's that #1 song. It's all the way to the top. It's called Rap is Crap, and it goes like this right here. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do what you got to do to churn them. If it's working,
I think the Atlanta show was a dome show in '99. So when they're out there with the Megadeth thing, I specifically remember Curt Hennig going, "We have a new song. It's called Rap is Crap," and half the audience popped. And he goes, "It goes a little something like this," and they just sang the whole thing, and it was just, God damn it, man! God damn,
fantastic. So like I said, the angle was dropped because people were cheering them instead of booing them.
The angle was dropped because they got over and they could make them money. That's crazy.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Why don't you just fucking roll with it? Yeah. And by the way, you can take the Rap is Crap away from it. You can do something else. It's just and use the characters of Henning and others, but whatever. And their final appearance was on Road Wild on August 14th, where Henning, Barry Windham, and Duncombe lost to the Revolution in a 6-man tag team match. In 2000, Henning remained on the WCW television setup, continuing to make sporadic appearances with the company, but his last televised match was against Chris Harris on the May 20th episode of Worldwide, which Henning actually won. Henning left WCW after his contract expired in the summer of 2000. Again, it's fantastic to me that you know the contract is going to expire and you don't try to put someone over that makes a difference and matters. Who's Chris Harris? Come on. Fuck we doing?
Dave Worldwide. That's like their WrestleMania. No?
Hey, man.
It wasn't?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was.
That's what I heard. After spending all of 2001 on the independents, Henning was promoted during the buildup of January's Royal Rumble.
In 2002? Yeah, 2002.
Yeah, in 2002, he would return as one of the combatives of 30 in that match.
60 minutes is sports entertainment. What I tell you, Dave, there's still some big names that appear in this year's Royal Rumble. And here's one of the biggest in the lore of the WWF, Mr. Perfect. And if he's perfect tonight, he'll win this Royal Rumble. And he may have to be perfect to win this Royal Rumble.
Henning, again billed as Mr. Perfect, although his real name was widely acknowledged, entered the Royal Rumble at number 25 as one of the final 3 competitors before being eliminated by Triple H in that match. His performance, along with the positive reaction of the Atlanta crowd, earned Henning a full-time contract with the WWF. He had matches with up-and-coming superstars like Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, and Batista, as well as having short feuds with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Rob Van Dam, before forming a tag team with Shawn Stasiak at a house show throughout March and early April, as well as a tag team on television with the Big Boss Man. Perfect was drafted to Raw during their first ever WWF draft. That's something that people forget. Henning was around for drafts.
Yeah, for the drafts.
That's
fucking weird.
I completely forgot about this period of him being back. Like, I was just like, I, for whatever reason, thought that when WCW died, I thought that he came back for like a Royal Rumble or like a gimmick battle royal or something like that. But I didn't know, I had forgotten that he was full time.
Dave's going to read on too. He was part of a super infamous plane ride that, like, you wouldn't think that he was a part of either. Like,
which, 100% got him released on May 8th of 2002. There was a physical confrontation with Brock Lesnar on the return flight.
Because he was dicking with Brock. He was egging him on. Brock says later he realized he was just fucking with me. But he was just like, he kept saying, like, I could take you down. I'm a better technical wrestler than you are. Like, I mean, he's Brock Lesnar. He's a fucking Olympic star. Like, he fucking collegiate champion.
And then
he's 300 pounds, by the way. And Curt Henning's on the plane. 2002 Curt Henning, like, who is not
there's an entire hour plus documentary that talks about the plane ride.
Oh, they were all getting hammered. They were all on pills, like, for sure.
They're hammered. Yeah. You have this confrontation. You have Ric Flair doing his helicopter spins with his penis.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah. All of it was like a wrestling, it was all a wrestling promo. All of it was.
And what sparked it all was the plane had repairs that needed to be done, and they allowed drink carts to run for like 4 hours.
They brought more alcohol on the plane.
They drank all the alcohol on that plane, brought more on before the plane even took off.
Yeah.
So I just question, like, Curt Henning maybe, should still be here. If not, it's the airline's fault. Throwing it out there. But after that release, Curt would work for NWA Total Nonstop Action. In TNA, he would wrestle 3 matches for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, 2 against Ron Killings and 1 against Jeff Jarrett. He did not win
Ron Killings is R-Truth for people who don't know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Henning wrestled his last match on January 2003, defeating David Flair and an axe handle on the pole match. Well,
his last match was against Ric Flair's son. What?
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yep. And this is where it gets sad. On February 10th of 2003, Henning was found dead in his hotel room in Brandon, Florida at the age of 44, 6 weeks from his 45th birthday. The Hillsborough County Medical Examiner's Office declared acute cocaine intoxication to be the cause of his death. It was stated by his father that steroids and painkillers also contributed to that death.
Of course it did.
Henning was married to Leonise Leonard. They had 4 children: Joseph, Amy, Kate, and Hank. Joseph and Amy were also professional wrestlers. Yeah, way too soon, man.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
birthday.
sorry. I'm so sorry that's the way he ended. I hate
Yeah,
it.
right.
By the way, we're all older than Curt Henning at his death.
Such a fucking shame.
Throwing that out there.
Like, I forgot
wow.
that's how he died. And I was doing the notes, like, I got, like, a little emotional because I was like, God, I'm so sorry. Like, people still talk about you and they emulate your style to this day. And, like, like, I'm so sorry. Like, cocaine, I mean, it was because it's all just searching for, it's a combination of searching for the pain to go away, the physical pain, but the high, like these guys, because people mock wrestling, because they think it's fun to mock. But when you're hot and you're in front of like 15,000 people and the adrenaline and everything, and like when you have to be in this rat race, like of my spot and my clout and like what I'm worth and am I over and, all this stuff, it's like, and then you're like an older guy, not even quite middle-aged yet, like just you're doing drugs and you're trying to enhance your body on top of that, but then you're also not getting sleep, and then you're doing cocaine, like to try to balance. It's like, I'm so sorry, that like a guy of Curt Henning, like died like that. And it sucks. Like it really does. And it's a combination of both, right? Like he was in multiple promotions. So to blame Vince only because Vince was the only one left at that point, because he put everybody else out of business, it's not fair. It's the style that they were in, it's the industry that they were in.
It's also the lifestyle that they all chose. Like,
yes.
Like obviously, like we've talked about it before. Like, obviously there's guys wrestling, well into their 40s. They're in great shape, but they're the substance issues that were
it's not a thing anymore.
That plagued so many wrestlers in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
They just don't do that anymore.
Well, there are TV shows now, right? Like before it was a traveling circus. You had to make your date. So if Vince went out of his way to advertise you on his syndicated show, he's putting money in you. So if Mr. Perfect against Hulk Hogan doesn't happen around the horn, he's like, I advertised you for 10 cities. You know what I mean? Like, so if you can't show up for 8 of them, you fucked me over. If Vince dared put money behind you, don't you dare call in sick. Don't you fucking dare. And it's like, you can't even blame Vince for that because it was the industry. Vince knew my industry is surviving because I have my stars that I advertise show up as advertised. Like, he was a promoter. Every promoter has that attitude. You can't blame Vince for that.
Right.
It's like
100%.
It's just the way the business was. Now it's a TV show, so they could take time off and still do vignettes and still be just as over and heel and get paid a lot of money and ride big tour buses so their backs aren't hurting on a tiny little rental car or whatever. Like, it's like, it's so different now. It's crazy. I wish that guys like Henning were around. Like, I wish that they were in their prime now and they never would have died. They all live in their fucking 80s and 90s. Like,
I wonder what Henning would have done as a match promoter. Like the guys are building.
He would have been awesome.
Today.
Like he would have been a producer, I'm sure, or whatever, a road agent or whatever. Like he would have been awesome, and like it's just fucking sucks. But yeah, I mean, then on a positive note with him, it's like he's one of the greatest performers ever. His selling, while it might have been over the top for a lot of people, but his psychology was so smart, and like that was his character. That was Mr. Perfect, like the overselling guy and everything. And it set the stage to where generations after him study it and go, okay, like he was onto something there. Let's tweak this, tweak that, or whatever. And you can't tell me that there's not a lot of the ropes for Henning would grab the ropes a lot for leverage on certain things he did. And that is absolutely emulated. Like there's so many people watch that and they're like, the way Henning hooks the ropes or like the way he did this or whatever. He knew he was at this stage of the ring, like to do this move. And like the flipping over when he would sit people up and then run behind them and do the flipping neck breaker. Like that was so innovative and like just such a flashy move that, he'd grab their hair on the way over.
Which really did nothing.
No, it didn't do anything, but it was just so visually.
But it looked good.
Yeah,
he took all the brunt of that move on his back.
And the perfect plex, like the hooking of the arms that you saw, and you're like, no one can kick out of that. They're just tightening the cradle. It's just so a suplex.
In my mind, he completely immobilized him. It felt like when he
because they were such a good move.
Yeah, they were recovering from a suplex too on top of that. So it was so smart. The way he's like, oh, I'm going to suplex him and I'm going to cradle him and like that, and I'm going to bridge, and his bridge is what sold it. Also probably fucking tore his back to shit.
Yeah, that's how it went down.
Mr. Perfect, we love you, buddy.
We do. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio. Watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, and check out exclusive content on Daily Motion at Our Wrestling Podcast. Or you can just go on social media and give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019. Or if you, just like dead people, you can go to Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. There's more dead people than alive people there. Just a fact. For the O.W.P, this is Jess, Craig, and Joe. I'm sorry, Craig's not here. We love you, Craig. It's me.
We don't.
Whoa. I was just curious what he was doing. Craig, what are you doing right now?
Nothing.
We that's not true. He's doing something. Signing off. You all have a good one.